What's up, everybody? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about A service versus B service, and kind of more generally, because like everyone searches for A versus B service, but there's more to it than that, and I wanted to go into that too. All right, so just to get this out of the way, I'm not a service recommend advisor or whatever. I applied for some service advisor jobs, and they were like, what was your last job? And I was like, CRO. And they were like, well, what was your job before that? I was like, CTO. And they were like, sir, you have absolutely no experience. and anyway, I didn't get that job, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to like have it for a while. Needless to say, whatever, they got other people maybe with experience. But I'm just going to put this out there. If experience was everything, then the Las Vegas Raiders should be amazing. They got John Gruden. They've got like Mike Mayock. Like even Derek Carr's not bad. Like they should be winning every year if experience was everything. So that being aside, I think it's a combination of experience plus aptitude, and I'm giving you like my recommendations based off of like my understanding of the Mercedes-Benz information plus my experience of maintaining my car since I was 17. I've also worked on boats a lot, like 454 Mercruisers. We had a 40-foot boat. We had a jet boat. So we've had a lot of boats that I worked on. You know what I mean, like fuel pumps and stuff like that. So let me just go through and generators, whatever. Everything breaks on boats after a while. But let's just go through, get into this. So a service is basically an oil change. Some places will call this an express service. The main reason why you want to go to like a Mercedes-Benz dealer for this service is if you're under warranty, you might want to keep that warranty with no questions asked. Or if you have like a very rare car, like a very nice high-end car, they actually put it on the Carfax that your car was serviced. So some people really like that. It might add to the value, but like let's be honest, if you get in a car accident or something, like any benefit from that will probably diminish. One other thing is, if you keep up with your service at the Mercedes-Benz dealership, they will give you, Mercedes-Benz USA and probably Europe, I guess too, will give you like roadside assistance. So if your car breaks down or whatever, they'll go and pick you up and tow your car to a Mercedes-Benz dealer as long as you're not like in the middle of Kansas, I would assume. All right, so A service is basically oil changes, and they recommend this at about 10,000 miles or 1 year, and it's going to also include like an inspection of your tires, an inspection of your like brake pads. They'll look at other fluids, and if they're low, they'll like top it up a little bit. But usually, I find they put it at like 50%. They don't actually go all the way to the top, and that's going to be your A service. Your B service is every 2 years or 20,000 miles, and this is also going to include things like filters. So A service will include an oil filter, of course, but your B service is going to include a cabin air filter. Some cars, like the GLA, I believe, and GLB, are going to also do engine air filters too, and some cars may not. They do say that B service has brake fluid exchange. I have not personally seen that. In fact, I've seen the opposite. Like they will advise brake service exchange at specific intervals, not necessarily just B service. But I don't know. Let me know if your dealership does it different. But in my experience, that is not, even though they say that, common knowledge, it really comes down to your vehicle and time. All right, so let's go over like some of the maintenance you're going to have to kind of look at. One, you're going to want to keep your air conditioning lines clean, your sunroof drains clean. That'll help whenever it's raining or hot, that everything just doesn't get on the floor in terms of like water and stuff. That would be something I would look at. I would inspect stuff. So you kind of, in my opinion, want to change your brakes before the sensors go off. And you can kind of tell if you need to do that based on like the wear on the rotors. Like if you're getting like a lot of like wear on the rotor, or you're hearing it, that's probably a good time to change your brakes. Now, some brakes may be more expensive than just, like the carbon ceramic brakes. You might want to change that when the sensor goes off because they're so expensive. In general, though, I would be a fan of changing before the brake sensors go off, because if you do that, you don't need to replace them, and that's a big deal. It's like at least $80, maybe more. All right. And if you do brakes by yourself, you're going to want to do the pads, and at the very least get the rotors like resurfaced at like an auto parts store. But personally, I would do new rotors at the same time for the fronts. The rears, you could probably get away with just the pads and resurfacing the rotors. The fronts are going to probably go more often than the rears because they take a lot more of the braking pressure. All right, so that's brakes. Brake fluid exchange, they say, again, be service. I haven't seen that. What I see is like, it's probably going to be like every 3 to 4 years or 5 years. They're going to want to change that. And you're going to want to change that even if the car is just sitting, because brake fluid can absorb moisture from the ambient air or whatever. And if you do that, it loses efficacy. I don't know, efficiency, whatever. You're going to want to change brake fluid. All right, transmission oil. They say it changes a little bit per car, but in general, I believe it's every 6 or 7 years, and like every 60 or 70,000 miles. Now I've talked to like Merendi and other people, and they actually recommend like every 4 to 5 years, every 36 to 40,000 miles. And the reason why you might want to do that is if you keep your car for a long time. Like if you're going to keep your car more than 100,000 miles, you're probably going to want to do more on the transmission side of things. All right. And with the transmission, we'll do a video on that later, but there's no dipstick, all right? You're going to have to fill the temperature. Even checking the level of your transmission fluid at a dealer, I don't know, but at an independent, I would guess it's going to be like $120 just to check the level. I think it's going to be spark plugs. Spark plugs, I believe the interval that's suggested is like 60,000 miles or 6 years. That might be a little bit low. It might be 80,000, but realistically for the spark plugs, you probably need to change them around 4 years and 40,000 miles at most. If you're not tuned, that would be like the number. If you are tuned, you're probably looking at 30 to 20,000 miles, 20 to 30,000 miles. The reason being, these spark plugs actually fire multiple times. And so like you basically double it versus like another make. So like you might get 100,000 miles out of like a Toyota set of spark plugs. These are going to be about half of that because they fire twice. All right, so that's that. Let's see what else. I think oil changes, I would personally probably do them every 5,000 miles to 7,500 miles, especially if you're tuned. This is a very highly debated issue. The reason why I'm going to say that is because A, these cars are turbocharged. So the oil actually runs through the turbochargers, okay? It's not like a supercharger where you have separate supercharger oil. This is part of the engine oil. The second thing is these are direct injection engines. So that means that they're not as clean at the top, if you will. On the ports, I kind of touched on that. The final thing is that these are chain drives. Like these are chain driven engines. They're not belts. So the chain is in the oil. And the oil is part of the timing. So like literally when you start your car and it rattles a little bit, that's like there not being oil in the tensioners because there's not like a check valve. And like the fix for that is putting a check valve so that oil stays there. So I understand this is a tough issue, especially a lot of people who love like the EPA and whatever are going to say this is stupid, you don't need to do that, you don't understand modern lubricant, you're like wasting oil. But you have to understand the environmental impact is measured based on partially how much oil changes your car is required, and because of that, you might have actually slight differences between the rest of the world and the USA or places where they're regulated like that. And you'll likely notice in the, buried in these owner's manual, right, is something that says like extreme duty or heavy duty applications change every 5,000 miles or 7,500 miles. Again, if you're getting rid of your car under lease, like 60,000 miles, if you're only going to keep your car during the lease period, you probably don't need to do that. But if you want to keep your car 80 or 100,000 miles, I would change the oil. All right, final thing is coolant. You're going to have to change the coolant probably at minimum every 10 years and 100,000 miles. You might want to do 8 years and 80,000 miles. And it really doesn't matter if you've driven that many miles because the coolant can break down a little bit and have like sediments and stuff. This can mess up the impellers on the water pumps. And to get to the water pump is sort of a pain in the butt for most cars. I haven't changed the water pump on a Mercedes yet, but on like a Range Rover, it's part of the timing gear. Like you kind of have to remove, like it's you don't have to remove the chain, but like you're way in there. Like if you're removing the chain, you're going to do the water pump. And the reason why you're going to do that is because these things do fail. Cabin air filters every 2 years. According to Mercedes, I would do every year personally, partially because you might have like mice or something in there, and you want to make sure that there's nothing going on, because that can be like, your little like bird in the mine telling you, hey, there's something wrong. Like, hey, there's something wrong here. You know what I mean? Like, you might have like mice, and if you have mice there, you need to really check the rest of your car, because if they eat through the wiring, it can be like thousands of dollars. So those are things I would do. I would probably balance your tires when they feel sort of out of balance. I'm not a huge fan of rotating tires. I think it's okay, but not essential. But I would definitely have them balanced. Alignment is probably going to be every like 4 years, 3 years, or whenever you change anything on the suspension, like your control arms, new bushings, things like that. Technically, you probably don't have to do it, but it's a good idea to do it. All right, guys, so those are my suggestions. If you do change your oil, just make sure you kind of know what the torque values are. You don't want to over-torque anything. I've got, the video about changing your spark plugs up. You might want to check that out. There are a few preventive maintenance videos I put up there too, like like camshaft position sensors and stuff. There are some things that you could do to avoid like kind of oil getting into your wiring. All right, till next time. Thanks for watching.